It was a stupid idea. So idiotic. Why did I listen to her? Maybe. I was hoping that I'd be able to score with her. Little did I know what we would unleash. "Hey Charlie, you need to come out with Sue and me tonight," Bill said, with a bit of a snicker. Looking at Bill, his brown hair shone in the sunlight, and traces of red flashed in the light. He had freckles on his face that dotted his cheeks. He was handsome, and all the girls loved him. He flashed his dimples, and the girls, they all buckled. "What do you have planned, Bill?" Curiosity betrayed my calm demeanour. "Sue's cousin is visiting from out of state. She's a bit of a hottie, and I said that I'd introduce you to her. Usually when someone tells you that they're sitting up with a hottie, you know she'll be as ugly as sin, but I reluctantly agreed to Bill's request. I bid Bill goodbye and headed home. The day was lovely. The warm spring air seemed to wash away the bitter cold of winter. My mind drifted to the date tonight. I wondered who this girl was and why she was in town. There was 1,000,001 questions, which all had to wait until I met her. Bill came by my place at 7 p.m. in his 67 Mustang. It was fiery red with black stripes along the sides. The motor rumbled as he pulled up outside my house. He blasted the horn thrice to get my attention. I bid my mother goodbye and ran out to the car. "Dude, you're wearing that?" Bill sounded dejected at my wardrobe choice. I thought wearing a classic Ozzy Osbourne shirt and jeans would be a fine choice for a first date. I was mistaken. Bill ripped on me for the entire trip, telling me that I'd die a virgin because of my crap taste in my clothes and music. We arrived at Sue's place shortly before 8 p.m. I jumped out of the Mustang and closed the door with a solid thud behind me. The path leading to Sue's place was enclosed by shrubs on both sides, making it challenging to find the way. The branches smacked into the side of my face as I walked. I wished to be out of this jungle. Finally, we arrived to a front porch, and Bill knocked on the door. The door swung open, and Sue stood there. Her blonde hair was pushed back over her ears, giving us a clear view of her azure eyes. They always reminded me of a cool, dark pool. She beckoned us to come inside. Stepping out of the bushland of her garden into her home, we entered a long hallway with family pictures on the walls of Sue and her parents. Bill and Sue made small talk as we headed into the lounge room. As we approached the room, a woman stood up and turned to face us. I almost fell over. She was drop-dead gorgeous. Her long black hair partially covered her white face. Her black lips were a prominent feature. She was a goth girl. I was in love. Sue introduced us, and I discovered her name was Daisy, which was unusual for someone with a persona of that of a goth. Sue's parents were out of town, so we had the house all to ourselves. Daisy and I got talking, and we hit it off. We both loved heavy metal music and the darker side of life. "You know, Sue, Bill, and Charlie, I have an evil idea," Daisy said as she winked at me. "I have a Ouija board. Let's play." Looking at her, I was the first to agree. I was excited to do something a little bit creepy. Daisy went and got the game, and we sat down in a circle, turning off all the lights. Daisy lit 3 black candles before the board. We put our fingers on the planchette. "Is anyone there?" Daisy asked. There was no movement. Nothing happened. Daisy repeated the question, and still there was no movement. I called to the king in yellow. "Are you here?" Daisy spoke to the darkness. There was movement, ever so slight. We all looked at each other in the candlelight, and Bill started laughing. "Stop it, you idiot," Daisy chastised him. The planchette started moving slowly. It scraped against the cardboard. The sound seemed so loud, it was almost deafening. It moved ever forwards until it stopped on "Yes." I looked at Daisy and said, "Did you push that?" With her eyes wide open, she shook her head no. It started moving again, and it spelled, "I am here." I was beginning to feel uneasy. Who was the king in yellow. What do you want? My voice was shaky. The planchette started to move faster and faster, jumping from letter to letter without stopping. You, I want you. Ripping my hand away from it, I wanted to scream at them to stop. Daisy looked at me, her eyes wide open in fear. What have you done? She demanded of me. Suddenly, all the candles were extinguished, snuffed out, and we were plunged into darkness. Bill started screaming. His voice broke the silence, and it felt like my eardrums were going to burst. I'd never heard Bill scream like that before. It was not natural, but soul-shattering. And then, the screaming stopped. The flame of one of the candles ignited, illuminating the room. It was hard to see, but I could tell. Bill was no longer here. He had vanished from the circle. The second candle ignited. Sue and Daisy's panicked expressions came into focus. Finally, the third candle burst into flame. The fire licked at the sides of the black wax. I swear, I saw a man sitting where Bill had been. He was wearing a yellow monk's robe, and the cowl was pulled over his head. His face was hidden, except for a pair of glowing yellow eyes. I looked away for a brief moment, and he was gone. The lights flared into life, illuminating the room painfully. Sue screamed. Her shrill cry pierced the night, causing me to cut my ears involuntarily and shut my eyes as tight as I could at the sound. She kept screaming and screaming. I decided to take a chance, and I opened my eyes. The man in yellow was still haunting my mind. As my eyes opened, I saw it. Bill. His face was twisted into a horrific vision. His mouth was wide open in a silent scream. And his eyes, they were gone. His skin was white tinged with a grey hue. You fool! Why did you take your hand off the planchette? Daisy shrieked at me. Her face betrayed her fear. She turned and looked at Bill. Her hands reached up, covered her mouth. Daisy started to whimper as she saw him. She was saying something, but it was muffled behind her hands. Sirens started to cry in the distance. Blue and red lights exploded through the windows. I did not realize the police were in the room. They pinned me to the floor, and my face pointed towards Bill's twisted form. I was led out to the police car, and the handcuffs dug painfully into my wrists, but I felt numb. The cruiser door was opened, and I was shoved inside, bashing my head against the seat as I was forced down. You sick son of a bitch, the officer said as he slammed the door. It seemed like I was being charged with Bill's murder. Eventually, the officers returned to the car and drove back to the station to book me. They were talking in the front, but I did not understand what they said. The streetlights blurred as the car moved ever closer to our destination. The pink, blue, yellow neon signs merged into a sickly rainbow of colours. Charlie, came a faint whisper on the edge of my hearing. Whipping my head around painfully in the direction of the words, I saw it. There was a man in yellow, his cowl pulled over his eyes. I could not see his face, but only darkness. It seemed like he was made of the abyss himself. Charlie, you are mine. He raised his hands towards where the officers were sitting. From under his yellow sleeve, 2 fingers emerged. He pointed his bony digits towards the officers. They elongated and started moving towards the unsuspecting victims. They flowed through the air like tentacles. They quickly passed through the security wire and to the back of the seats. Slithering around the neck rests, they started to coil around the police officers' throats. Wrapping tightly around their necks, they struggled to breathe, their hands tearing at the invisible tendrils. Panic flashed across their faces as the police car veered off course and crashed into an electricity pole. There was a loud bang as metal wrapped around the wood. Glass cracked and exploded quickly, spraying the occupants. I could feel blood running out of my nose from the impact. My entire face throbbed with pain. My door was open, and without needing an invitation, I threw my legs out. I was a bit unsteady walking for a few moments. My head was still spinning. There was a metallic clicking sound as the handcuffs fell from my wrists, and bounced off the bitumen. I ran. I didn't know where I was going. I just ran. I do not know how long I was running. My legs were burning and my chest was tight from lack of oxygen. There was a small culvert under a bridge. I squeezed inside. The smell of wet mud assaulted my nose, and the walls were thick with green moss. I didn't care. I just needed a rest. The sun's light was starting to break the horizon. It would not be long until the police found me. I was confused. What happened last night? How did this girl come into my life and mess everything up? I needed a rest that allowed me to clear my mind to think. My eyes felt heavy, and I needed a few minutes to sleep. Why does the ground feel sandy? Breaking out of my slumber, I looked around, and sand was everywhere. Was I still dreaming? No, I'm very much awake. The sand felt cold under my hands. The grain stuck to me as I pushed myself to my feet. It was soft under my steps, and I sunk ever so slightly into it. It was night time, and a bit of wind cut through my clothes and into my skin, causing me to shiver ever so slightly. The moon was high in the sky, full and proud, but it was not the normal silvery white colour. It was a bright yellow and hung in the sky, offering me a direction to travel. One step after another, I started walking towards the golden moon. The sand was everywhere, and there was no sign of life. I couldn't even hear any insects. I walked for what felt like hours. The moon, my travelling companion. My mind drifted back to Daisy and what she said about the king in yellow. Who the hell is that? I need answers. Why did he appear to me? Why did he help me escape the police? At the fort of the patrol car, the sand started to shift to my right. A vortex of particles moved and swelled. The crashed police car was pulled out of its grave, and the twisted metal seemed to scream as it emerged from the ground. Inside, I could see the two police officers. They wore the same twisted masks that Bill had on his face when he died. It was a look of pure terror at being taken from this world by an unseen force. Not lingering any longer, I ran away from the car. How the hell did that happen? The car faded into the distance. I had to get away from it before those poor souls sought revenge for what I did to them. Large stones started to appear before me, like the earth was pushing its fingers through the dense sand. Approaching them cautiously, I realised they weren't random, but they were grave markers. But whose graves were they? The bitter winds of this place have long withered away the engravings. The quartz and the sand had banished their names to the past. In the distance, I could see a dark structure. I couldn't make it out, but I'm sure this is where I needed to go to find some answers. "Charlie," came a familiar whisper across the sands. The closer I got to the structure, it resembled a pyramid with something on the top. The bricks were canary yellow and shone in the moonlight like a monolith in the dark. Atop the pyramid was a throne carved from obsidian with golden inlays along its edges. Silver runes adorned the legs, and they were in a script that I did not understand. The throne was large enough for a giant to sit in. Sitting on the throne was the man dressed in yellow, or should I say, the king in yellow. His robes covered his face. I could not distinguish any features from within, almost like a mask was adorning his face. Only his glowing yellow eyes shone out into the darkness. His yellow robe was finely woven with the same runes that were upon his throne. Fear was seeping out every pore of my skin, and I was too scared to look directly at the king. I am sure if I gazed at him for any longer than a few seconds, I would go mad. The king raised his hand and gestured to something on the ground at the pyramid's base. Approaching the item, I saw it. It was a white mask with no features, no eyes, no mouth, nothing. It was blank. "Charlie, put it on and be my envoy." The king's whisper crashed into my mind. My hand was moving on its own, and I had no control. I resisted. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out of my throat. The mask was coming closer, and closer. There was nothing that I could do to stop it. The mask pressed against my face, and it felt ice cold. My skin started to merge with it as it bound to my flesh. My eyes, forever dark, sealed them shut. Visions started to flash in my mind. Daisy, Bill, and Sue, they were all dead. I could see myself running from the crashed police car and feel the bullet, fired by one of the still alive police officers. It pierced the back of my skull, shattering it. I could see the graves I had passed. The words on them came alive and danced until I could understand what they said. Here lies Charlie Roberts, born 30th of September 2005, died 31st of August 2023. I now knew where I was. This is the land of Carcosa, previously known as the Kingdom of Heaven. The King in Yellow is the usurper who murdered God, and I am his envoy. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's lullaby. If you enjoyed my content, please like, comment, and subscribe. And remember, keep watching for what's in the dark.